Welcome to another episode of Absolutely Fabulous. It's episode 32. We're talking about the Australian Defence Force being deployed to the mid-north coast flooding, air quality warning issued for other states due to the South Australia and Victorian droughts. And we're also talking about Check Your Mates, Open the Gates, which is a group organised by a really wonderful lady who has been in attendance to the Harvest Her Power conference earlier this year that Gillian and I both had the absolute pleasure of meeting, and that is Katie. So we're going to dive into her page, what she's set up, and why we think that her page is really important.
Hi, welcome to Absolutely Fabulous. My name is Gillian Fennell, also known as Station Mum 101. I love everything about agriculture, especially the people and especially communicating about what makes Australian ag so special.
And I'm Katja Williams, a beef, cattle and cropping farmer, and I love all things ag, and I'm also known as the ultimate farm wife. Together, we are Absolutely Fabulous, and we are talking all things agriculture beyond the headlines.
And we can't wait to give our opinion to you, and we hope you enjoy it.
So let's get into today's episode. Gillian, what's your week been like?
My week has been pretty hectic because got home not that long ago, trundling off again tomorrow. For those who'll be listening to this on Friday, we're recording on Tuesday, so Wednesday. I'd like to say crack of dawn, but I haven't even packed a bag yet. So still washing in the machine, et cetera, et cetera. So like smoko time Wednesday, we'll be trundling off back down south again, have some engagements, doing the politician meet and greet shenanigans and all that sort of stuff that goes along with one of my other roles as the chair of Livestock SA. But yeah, it's been pretty quiet here. Nice cold weather, I don't enjoy being cold, but at least the flies have settled down since the cold started. No rain for us as of yet. I don't really think we're going to get any. But yeah, what have you been up to, Katja? Feeling better, I hope?
Feeling better, still getting, a fair bit of fatigue, but I think that's also because, as those who've been around for a long time will know, that I'm not very good at, relaxing, taking time, doing all those things that I should be doing. But last week was Wellington show. So I went down to Wellington and I took all 4 kids. I'm the primary carer, so they came along with me. I judged section 14, which is jams and preserves, and section 16, which is kids cooking. So that was a full-on 5 hours of taste testing and critiquing and placing all those wonderful, wonderful entrances. And then we went back on the Saturday because part of the judging gig is that you get a free ticket to the show the next day. So I took the kids down to the show the next day, entered all 3 who were eligible into the Little Miss and Master Tiny Tots competition, and Caroline ended up coming home with Miss Tiny Tot, and Macquarie ended up coming home with Master Tiny Tot. So a great 2 days for everybody.
They're going to love that at their 21st. That's just going to be beautiful. You know what, though, because I put your judging, like your official judging photos on the socials, and you're getting lots of offers to travel to country shows and participate in judging. Haven't seen any financial sort of support offered yet, but they don't want me. They said they want you because you actually do know what you're talking about.
I do hear that makes a difference, Julian.
I don't even eat jam, so me judging a jam competition would probably not be the greatest thing on earth. But if you're listening and you do want Katja to come and be the guest judge at your show, she is available and does actually know what she's talking about. So let us know.
So send those through either to Gillian at the socials or myself at the email address. But without further ado, let's jump into our first topic. So the Australian Defence Force has been deployed to help the mid-north coast flooding. Now, this was sent through by an AgFab with the comment, why wasn't this response activated for the Queensland farmers?
Yeah, it does beg the question. And so I've got a little bit of an insight into this. So the big floods that happened in Queensland when it just sort of fell down overnight and just sort of wiped so many cattle off the face of the earth. My dad was actually the local SES controller for when that happened. And so they were managing by themselves for a good amount of time before the army got called in. They basically waited until all the local volunteers hit maximum fatigue before the army was deployed. And again, these things do take time because you have to get ministerial approvals and all those sorts of things. I think the big difference between the Queensland Channel Country floods and the Taree area floods that we've just seen in New South Wales, again, floods are horrific. Sympathy to anyone who's had to go through that. I couldn't even begin to imagine, is the number of people affected. So the Channel Country is not very densely populated. They were evacuating people quite reasonably and quickly. They were self-sufficient to a certain extent. And yeah, deploying the army, like, I know it sounds like a good idea, but it just adds such a level of complexity and bureaucracy to rescue and support efforts that you can usually just get on and do by yourself without having to worry about, you know, who's in charge and that. Because with the army turns up, they are running the show. There's no other, like, they come in and they are the actual top dogs. They don't take orders from anybody locally. And yeah, it's not something that people take in quite, they don't take those decisions lightly. But I can see how it would feel very unfair, especially if you're on the receiving end of those flood waters. It's like, geez, I already would have really loved a big chopper to come and pick up me and my kids and take us to safety instead of like having to sit out here isolated on this patch of dirt for however long it was. And yeah, I can see how it would be. Yeah, but I don't know. Government's bureaucracy is probably the best answers I've got for you, and it sucks either way. I really do feel for the flood affected people. It's a terrible tragedy.
And I was talking to a few volunteer organisers as well, like Blaze Aid and a few other people about the Queensland floods. And I was saying, you know, what can we do? How can we send our support? What's going on? And they were saying we can't do anything until we can get our feet on the ground. And what that means for a lot of the other support organisations and charities means that the floodwaters actually need to have receded, and they need to have a patch of ground which has facilities, which has access to all areas, because there's no point in them going there if it's still too wet for them to actually get anywhere. They can't get there if they can't get themselves supplies for their volunteers. So a lot of the support that are in those extra charities and groups are for when the water subsides, when it dries out, when they can actually get, you know, volunteers up there with supplies.
Yeah, and it's such a logistical nightmare. And when you think about the number of volunteers and those sorts of things that are deployed, and we see this with bushfires because that's when it's easy to get all the vision. You see all the big camps, like they deploy little towns essentially, and they're fully self-contained. So you do need that safe area for those to establish, and it does take time to mobilise all that plant and equipment and to get it to where it needs to go, and all of those sorts of things. And when you're in the midst of that circumstances, when you're in the midst of that emergency, you know, you just want someone to come and be able to save you. But unfortunately, the size and scale of Australia especially makes that sometimes really, really challenging. And so yeah, it's not an easy answer, and neither is, like, our army's really good at that sort of engineering type stuff and search and rescue type stuff, but they're not the answer to everything, because the army has its own specific way of doing things, which sometimes may not be the best way to help a local community. And I think that's probably the most important thing out of any of these sorts of tragedies, any of these sorts of disasters, is listen to what the people on the ground themselves want and need and give it to them, instead of saying, oh no, we don't have that policy, or we don't work that way. And this applies to all sorts of natural disasters and things. Like, we're currently seeing it in the drought response in South Australia. People are saying, oh, well, drought's not a natural disaster. Okay, well, 1 year of drought, you know, yeah, that's fine. Your business can weather it. 2 years of drought, if you're well supplied and well prepared, yep, you'll get through. 3 years, You know, you're starting to really squeak on the margins there. But when you're heading into your fourth season, then it is a natural disaster, and you do need a similar sort of response. So I'd really like to see a policy shift happen to recognise long-term droughts and the effects that they have.
No doubt that will be part of your conversation during the week with those politicians when you get there to schmooze with them, Gillian.
It certainly will be.
Excellent. Let's jump in to air quality warning. So New South Wales and parts of Victoria got issued a dust warning. So because of the drought in South Australia and Victoria, there has been a massive dust storm. Now that dust storm ended up in New South Wales overnight, including around near where I am in Dubbo. So that is a long way that dust has come to get here. Made for a beautiful rainbow sunset, which I might even send that photo through to Gillian if you guys want to have a look about what that dust storm was here. It comes with health warnings, so anyone who is asthmatic or has respiratory issues, they have said please stay inside. Now, I just want to remind our listeners, yes, if that dust storm has come through and you're experiencing that, just imagine how bad that dust storm was in Victoria, in South Australia. Remember, that dirt has to have been airborne there first. And to think about our South Australians and Victorians through this hard time. And for those, we did have some questions during the week and last week about the drought response. So I think what Gillian and I decided was the best place is to contact a local CWA group, ask exactly what their locals need to be able to support. In the New South Wales drought, our last one, which was 5 years, it lasted 5 years. The CWA ladies did an incredible job sending out boxes. We've done an episode before about what you should and shouldn't include in those boxes. So I'm going to add that link in the show notes below if you want to go back and listen to that list as well.
Yeah, and that'd be great. And I know like dust storms are pretty rubbish. We get them here through the summer. We're not quite as bad as what we saw because we have the benefit of having most of our place covered in a large amount of rocks, which holds our topsoil down. So, you know, that's what the South Australian and Victorian farmers who are struggling with drought are dealing with on a daily basis, like those local raised areas of dust. That's what, and that's what our farmers are living with, you know, on a day-to-day basis, is dust and you know, bare paddocks and all those sorts of things. So I hope you're enjoying South Australia's best topsoil over there in Dubbo, can't you? Look after it for us.
Only if it increases our soil fertility, Gillian.
Yeah, and it's. And, you know, going back to my previous point that I was banging on about, like, you know, once drought extends past a certain amount of time, it is a natural disaster. And that's when you do see these sorts of damaging things happen. And that's when you do need a different response. It's not just, oh, well, you have it prepared for a few dry months. Like, this is years and years. And I don't know any other industry or business that could withstand it. I mean, look at what happened with COVID, the amount of money we gave to airlines who aren't an essential industry to keep them afloat for a few months. And we have farmers across Australia, because long-term droughts go across in all areas of Australia, who go for years and years and really get the bare minimum, if they get anything at all. There's so much onus put on being individually prepared and resilient and sustainable, which is, you know, so it should be. But then they say, oh, but, you know, poor airlines, poor banks, have a few $1 billion to bail yourselves out of something that you should have planned for, or at least have reserves for. But unfortunately, that doesn't apply to people who are growing people's food. So yeah, that's a bit of a double standard for us.
Yeah, absolutely. If you do have someone who has respiratory issues or suffers from asthma, all my kids suffer from asthma, this is a reminder to make sure that your medical cabinet is stocked up with the Ventolin and other items that you require in the case of an asthma attack.
Yeah, especially the further you are from town, the more important it is to have everything that you need, and really check your weather reports. You'll know when there's going to be areas of, you know, periods of lots of dust or pollen or those sorts of things. Really, it does pay to be prepared.
So, Gillian, that takes us to the mid of our episode. And this part of the episode is sponsored by Farm Table. So thank you, Farm Table. Farm Table now hosts our podcast page, our landing page. So I will add that in the show notes below for you all to check out. But welcome to Farm Table. Farm Table is a proud independent Australian agricultural knowledge platform, bringing together the most relevant and curated agricultural resources from around the globe. More than that, Farm Table supports industry collaboration, peer-to-peer networking, and functions to build the capacity of individuals and organisations across the entire Australian ag supply chain. With over 3,000 resources, the latest agricultural events, funding opportunities, grants, micro courses and workshops all in one location, Farm Table makes it easier to find the information you need. Yeah, absolutely. Gillian, did we have any questions come through over on the socials this week?
We didn't, but I finally answered one that we've had sitting there for months. And Marie was lovely. She said, better late than never, when I finally got back to her. And we did cover this on the show along like last year, literally, when Marie asked us about what is leading to the increase in cancer rates. Is it agricultural chemicals, those sorts of things? And we answered that comprehensively, but I finally gave her a written answer. And, we had a bit of a chat about it, and we decided that a lot of people get really excited over agricultural chemical residues. But realistically, the amount that you actually come in contact with as a day-to-day consumer is negligible. You're probably breathing in worse stuff walking down the street in traffic than anything that's going to be attached to your food, especially if you're eating food that has already been like wheat made into a loaf of bread or something like that. Like the amount of agricultural chemicals that you might come in contact with would be, I doubt you could even measure them properly. Every now and again, you might pick up the tiniest speck with the most high-powered, computer and monitoring equipment in a high-tech lab, but I don't think it's something that the average everyday consumer needs to be concerned about. Obviously, if you're working with those chemicals, wear your PPE, follow the instructions properly, don't be stupid, don't be casual with it, because some of them are quite deadly, especially in their concentrated form. Just, be safe and be careful and read the instructions and look after yourself and do it properly, and everything should be good.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gillian, you've been rolling out some of the reviews that we've received over on the podcast platforms. Is there an Ag Fab of the week or a review you'd like to share?
I don't have an Ag Fab of the week or review I'd like to share. I would like everyone who's ever been mentioned on our podcast to drop me a note, and I will send you some stickers. Because please don't make me go back through all the podcasts and listen to who you were Ag Fab of the week. I need to know you keep listening. This is how we keep you on the hook, see? So now you can actually get something from us. If we've mentioned you, I'll just take your word for it. Anyone can send me their name and address and I'll send you some stickers. That's fine. I don't care. I will just believe you that you're one of our greatest supporters and I will send you something.
Well, we know because they'll be listening to at least this one.
Yep. If you've listened to this podcast, you can get stickers. Flick me a DM with your name and address and I'll put something in the post. Don't hold your breath for it, because it'll take me a little while to organise myself, seeing as I'm going to be away for a bit, but I will definitely send you something eventually.
And with that, we'll jump into our third article this week. So wonderful Katie, she has started the Check Your Mates, Open the Gates, and she started this as an initiative where, we've got things like Are You OK Day, but it's once a year. She's wanting to start this initiative where you check in with your mates every Tuesday. Pick someone in your phone you haven't spoken to for a while and give them a call. Touch in with them. Make sure that they know that you're there if you need them. Make sure you're asking those deeper questions rather than, are you okay? Really deep dive into what's going on and try and see what kind of support both of you might need as well. So we're going to attach.
Sometimes that's what you need, just to vent to someone, who shares the same sort of circumstances, and you don't want a solution. You just want to be able to share how you feel without being judged or told what you're doing wrong or anything like that.
So I'm going to add Katie's links in the description below because she is doing fantastic work over there, and she was at the Harvest Her Power conference. So Gillian and I did get to meet her, and I thought that is absolutely fabulous. And
when I motivate myself next week, I will make sure every Tuesday on the AgFab social channels a reminder pops up at about 8 p.m. after tea. So if you're scrolling on your phone, it will remind you to reach out to someone and they might reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to share a bit of a personal story around this because this is something that I do when I go in for school pickup. I don't have a lot of time and I don't have a huge amount of time on the road where I'm actually in cell service. So I've usually got about 15 minutes but on my way to or from picking up the kids where I have cell service, and I choose that time to give someone a call. And I was calling a friend probably around the last 3 years, a fantastic friend of mine. I knew something was wrong, but they weren't opening the door. So I would give them a call every 2 months or so. I even got to the point where I set an alarm in my phone because they were exhibiting some unusual behavior. And I gave them a call and just left a voicemail. They never picked up, which is also unusual behavior for them. But when they were ready, after a few years, they sent a little letter in the mail and just said, really appreciate you checking in. Haven't been able to pick up the phone. And Jillian and I have spoken about when people get down and it really starts to become a barrier picking up the phone, making the call themselves, knowing that I was calling them, checking in, even though they weren't ready to speak, they knew that I was there. And that all they needed was that reminder to keep getting them through the day. They have had an absolute horrific couple of years. And I won't share their personal story, but just it makes a big difference. Even if they don't pick up, leave a message. It can mean the world to someone.
And if you're on the other side of that, if you're the one making the call, don't cut that friend off if they're not responding or replying to you, because they literally may be in a place where they just simply cannot. You know, we all deal with things in different ways. So, yeah, give them a little bit of grace. Don't take it as a personal affront, which can be quite challenging because my friends know I rarely ever talk on the phone, would rather send a text, will only return calls under sufferance. Unless the message says, call me back right now, chances of me calling back are pretty thin. But yeah, it's, you know, we all deal with things in our own way. And so, yeah, don't cut them off if you're not getting what you want out of that friendship.
Remember, you're making the call for your mate and they probably really need it.
And that's an excellent initiative, Katie. Congratulations for thinking of that and to putting that out there, thinking of others.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's awesome. Well done.
Lighthearted topic to end the day, to end today's session, and that is talking about the most recent Farmer Wants a Wife episode. I would really like to start by saying we've said what we haven't enjoyed about the editing this season, but what I've really enjoyed about the editing this season is the staggered finish between when a farmer decides, yep, he's got his two top girls, he's going to make a decision. We saw it with Jarrett. No doubt we'll see it with one of the others coming up soon. And then we also spoke about the drama with Farmer Jack, the rodeo boy, who has been edited out of everything. The positive that has come out of that is that the other Farmer Jack from Tasmania, not to be confused with the first one, has been brought in late in the season to join the ladies. He has picked his top 4, not his top 5, which apparently is the first time in viewing history for the show. He's taken his top 4 back to the farm.
Dairy farmer. You can have that all to yourself. Look, there's a lot of things I would never do, and dairy farming's one of them. It's probably one of the toughest jobs in agriculture, to be honest. Like, yeah, broad scale ag, it's hot, it's dusty, it's everything else, but dairy farming is relentless. And I'm not an early riser by nature, so my cows would just have to really readjust their schedule if I was going to be a dairy farmer in any sense. But yeah, I'd splash straight out on those multi-million-dollar automatic dairies that I didn't even have to turn up for. The cows just make their own arrangements. Yeah, so It is, and you know what happens, Katja, when you have friends with high integrity? Because I have friends in Billawheeler, and they know. And I have asked them directly to tell me, and they have said no because they are adhering to the spirit. They just live in the community. They are adhering to the spirit of the show and are not giving me any inside information. So, yeah. Sometimes I do enjoy having good friends who are good people, but sometimes I just wish they'd bend their rules for me just a little bit. It's not fair.
So they'll tell you enough that the lady's living in the town, but not enough to say who they have chosen. I love that. I love that.
Yeah, this season, and Katja will tell the listeners, because then they can petition the Farmer Wants a Wife producers on our behalf. A lot of active social media users in the ag industry have received a direct email from the producers of Farmer Wants a Wife asking them to spread the message, to encourage people to apply. And Katra and I both got emails separately. I sent them back an email and said, have you listened to this magnificent podcast? And gave them all the links where we talk about Farmer Wants a Wife, and said, you really need to bring us on as advisors to the show. We will help you pick better contestants. We will help you pick better girls. We will help you design better challenges. Because you know what I was thinking about? You know, when the new farmer's there and all the girls are there and they're like, and this person really wants to meet you. Do you know what would be the most jaw-dropping thing if it wasn't him? What if it was his mum and they had to meet his mum first? That would be gold. Had to win over old mum before they even get a look in. She bushgate some of them straight up. And if you're listening to this Farmer Wants a Wife producer, I will pursue you for breach of copyright if you do take that idea and use it. So...
Oh my goodness, that escalated quickly.
So you better bring us on as consultants, because then you can use our ideas.
Oh my goodness. I'm blown away. I'm speechless.
Yeah. From previous seasons to now, there's just something missing. But do you know what I noticed today? Because I only watched it today because I was watching tea, catching up while I was making tea. The girls are so much smarter now. And I think social media is to blame, because they're all saying things like, we need to sit in our feelings, and like all this pseudo sort of psychological therapist speak. And the blokes have just got no concept. They're just like, oh yeah, she's all right. Yeah. Oh, she makes me happy. Yeah. And the girls are all like, so we just need to sit in this for a while, and we need to see if we connect on another level. And, and it's all like watching a TikTok reel or an Instagram reel or something where someone's re-going over their therapy session. And so they are just bamboozling these poor country blokes again. So lads, if you're listening, I find that incredibly unlikely, but if you're by any chance you come across this podcast and you're wanting to get on Farmer Wants a Wife and you want to inside track, start watching some of those Instagram reels and stuff about how to get in touch with your feelings. At least learn the language, and you won't be so bamboozled about what's going on around you.
I did have a little laugh in the earlier parts of the season when they were talking about, what are the qualities that you wanting to look for in a man, and one of them was saying emotional intelligence, and I was like, oh my goodness, have you met a country boy recently? Like, yeah, some of them don't.
Yeah. And I found it quite disingenuous that one bloke had a kid from a previous relationship. If I found that out halfway through proceedings, that's a pretty big piece of information.
Well, I don't think it ever aired. I don't think it's been mentioned on the show, and I wonder if that was part of his contract for security for his child, to keep it off air.
Yeah, and you don't. And this is the thing: you don't want kids to be involved in this sort of stuff. Because they are children. They don't have a choice. They can't give consent to being on TV and all those sorts of things. Then if they're school age or something, you don't want them to have to suffer through that at school, or your mum or your dad, whoever's on TV being a wanker. I think that just goes to show, not that there's anything wrong with having a child, obviously, but I think it demonstrates that the pool of applicants from the farmer side is pretty shallow. If there were other options that didn't have a child, as a complicating factor and thinking about protecting that child, you'd obviously, I as a producer would choose them, not because kids, it's just messy, like with that whole social media and public face and all that sort of thing. Like, and then that kid's mum's got to deal with this sort of nonsense, and it's just, I didn't gave me a bad feeling when I found that out, to be honest.
I'm also wondering about the living quarters, because we've sort of touched on this previously, but they've all got big farmhouses with living quarters, and all the girls are in, different rooms. And I wonder if that's another reason that the pool is so shallow, because a lot of farms that I've been on don't have that level of accommodation for the filming. So I even wonder whether the actual filming sometimes of inside these houses, because sometimes it doesn't quite match up, whether they've got an Airbnb elsewhere or a neighbour's place.
What I reckon. And there have been sort of controversies, as controversial as this show could get, over some of the locations used for filming are not the farmer's actual farm.
Yeah.
And in some cases, it's because they're not actually like an owner-occupier, they're an employee or a manager or something like that. Or again, the accommodation isn't suitable and those sorts of things. And I guess it's sort of that like magic of TV thing. Like, heaven forbid someone wanted to come and film in my house. And forgive me, I'm over an episode of Hoarders. Like, I'm looking here now, I've got half assembled furniture sitting all around me because I'm still halfway through redoing the office. Got an empty filing cabinet, and I've got a set of drawers over there. I've got my new rug I haven't unrolled, leaned up against the cupboard. It's like a constant disaster zone here at my place. And you're right, like, because you're bringing, because there's not just them, there's the crew, and so they can't be too far away from town because the crew can't all camp up there as well. So they have to be like within like driving distance of town. There's so many complicating factors, and I think that's why we don't see like a more remote or isolated sort of farmers on these sorts of things, because the logistics is just too hard. But I'd love to see them roll up to like a literal stock camp and say, yep, we're contract musterers. There's no 24-hour power. We live in swags.
Maybe that's a spin-off show.
This is where we are for 6 months of the year. and see them run screaming for the hills. But yeah.
Jackaroo wants a Jillaroo.
Yeah. Wants some unpaid labour. Jackaroo wants a camp cook.
Yeah. I'd love that.
Yeah, there's so many things around it, and it's they need to do something to the show, I think, to sort of I don't know, not bring it back, because obviously things evolve and that sort of thing, but to revitalize it, they need to stop going down this like drama, everyone being nasty to each other path, and start focusing back on that sort of life on the farm, interpersonal relationships between the farmer and the prospective girls, not between the girls themselves. Like, that's like that. Because it is a very unnatural scenario to be in there, like with one person and then a group of other people battling for their affection. I find that very unusual.
You mentioned previously in one of our other episodes that, maybe we have reality TV fatigue. I mean, this is up to season 15, and a lot of reality shows don't get that far. So they've done an incredible job to reach this milestone. They haven't put enough time into the depth of the farmer and the depth of the girls so that you get behind them and barrack, for your favourite. And I think the editing is it's kind of like the sneak peeks are also giving away too much for the next episode. Like, you already know which girls they've picked for the 24-hour date, or you already know what's coming up. Like, it's no surprise anymore. And I'm wondering why that is the direction that it's going, rather than being a surprise who they pick. Or
why would you watch if you just have to watch a few shorts on social media? Like, they're giving away the best bits, and I think that's an indication of the audiences in decline, because they're trying to ramp and again, those sort of like really juicy snippets and all those sorts of things. They're trying to encourage people to watch, but people are like going, I think it turns people off more than anything, because there's no mystery and again, you're right, getting in behind people and like, oh, I want him to find a nice girl, and, I want her to find a nice boy and all that sort of thing. Because I think that's what they're invested in, the love story. They're not invested in the drama. They want a genuine love story. And that's why people, I think that's part of the perception that people have of farmers, is that, the last of the romantic occupations and a love story for the ages and those sorts of things. Not like a maths bloody Love Island type scenario. I think they want that, old-fashioned approach.
I wonder if it's maybe not in decline. I wonder if it's maybe that instant satisfaction, but they've tried to bring that instant satisfaction into the long form content. Like I find, because I'm across social media as well as podcast and YouTube, with the podcast and YouTube, it's a very different audience. They love that longer style context. They love more about it's for them, it's more about developing an interest in you and what you have to say, and then that value adds to the content that you're producing. And you see that a lot in YouTube and podcasting, as well as, I guess you can say, most reality TV shows, even though they're in episodes, is still long form content, and then trying to bring that short gratification through reels and social media into it. I wonder whether maybe it should just be left as either. Like, you're either going to watch the long form content or you're going to watch the shorts and get the snippets. I think maybe they're trying to collaborate it, and it's not quite coming across well for those who do like that longer form content.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. I think it might be a strategy to try and expand their market and expand their viewer base by giving them the two different types, because it's generally two different types of people consume the two different types of content. But I think what they're doing is, because most of us now, even if we're not actually engaging with short form or long form content, we are seeing it. And I do think that's sort of, devaluing, the brand or the show or whatever, in the eyes of I guess, of everyone, because it's sort of like, and the way that they're getting all the PR releases into all the news sites and those sorts of things, and I'm not enjoying it. But I really enjoy those things anyway. So maybe I'm not their target market. Don't listen to me.
No, I think they're definitely going for a younger target audience rather than us OGs.
They're looking for potential contestants, not potential contestants' mother-in-laws. Oh, that'd be good if they could get one that doesn't have a mother-in-law. I could be their stand-in mum and really give the girls a good introduction into being a daughter-in-law on a farm. That would be daughter-in-law boot camp.
I'd get them to listen to my backlog of episodes for over 80 episodes of The Ultimate Farm Life. That's what we're doing today.
If you're thinking of applying for Farmer Wants a Wife on the girl side, or wanting to marry a farmer side, that should be compulsory listening. If you think you're going to marry a farmer, listen to all of these things, and then see if you still want to go ahead with the application.
And if you want me to put on a weekend retreat where I can refine it all for you, I'm happy to do that as well.
The proper insight into what it's actually like.
Absolutely. All right, Gillian, that's all I have for today anyway. Have you anything else, final closing statements, anything you want to bring up?
I don't have any other closing statements or anything. I'm pretty all, talked out today, believe it or not. Calls and all sorts of the last couple of days, because things are hectic. The cat is out of the bag. That will well and truly be out of the bag by the time the podcast comes out. Julie Collins, a federal ag minister, is finally coming to South Australia. So that's what I've been working on, organising a tour and meetings and roundtables and all those sorts of things, because it's not just the livestock industry. We have to collaborate with all the other agricultural industries in South Australia, because a lot of them are struggling and suffering. And, it's like herding cats, because federal ministers have their own distinct requirements for certain things. Mm-hmm. And of course, they're the top dog in the room, so they get to have the final say, and they get to say what they will and won't do. So it's going to be an interesting time. I'll get next podcast, next Tuesday, I'll be able to give you a full breakdown of how it went. We'll see how satisfied and pleased we are with any sort of announcement that may or may not be coming from the federal government. But I'm not holding my breath for that to happen either. So, yeah.
And hopefully she's not too bland for you, Gillian.
Look, I swear, it'll be a challenge. And, I will be on my best behaviour at the roundtable meeting, because, catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar, but it's going to be really hard work, I can assure you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, best wishes with all that. We look forward to hearing it next week. Until then, everyone, we'll see you next week on the podcast.
Bye.